the haul through Hollow County. It was 2:47 a.m. when Danny Grayson's rig rumbled past the faded "Welcome to Hollow County" sign, swallowed by the pitch-black stretch of Route 17. A 20-year veteran of the trucking life, Danny had hauled everything from livestock to frozen goods across the Midwest, his Peterbilt cab his second home. Tonight, though, the air felt wrong, thick, like it was pressing against his chest. His CB radio crackled with static, no voices, just a low hum that gnawed at his nerves. He chalked it up to the storm brewing on the horizon, lightning flickering faintly through the pines. His delivery was due in Dayton by dawn, 300 miles away, and he wasn't about to let a little weather stop him. Danny wasn't superstitious, not like some drivers who swap ghost stories at truck stops. Tales of hitchhikers vanishing from passenger seats or headlights that followed too close, but never passed. He'd always laugh them off, sipping his coffee, saying, "Road's just a road." But Hollow County had a reputation. Truckers called it the dead stretch, a 50-mile ribbon of asphalt where radios died, engines stuttered, and sometimes rigs didn't make it out. No one could explain why. Wrecks were found, drivers weren't. Danny figured it was exaggeration, fueled by sleepless nights and too much caffeine. Still, as the mile markers ticked by, 47, 46, 45, he couldn't shake the feeling he wasn't alone. At mile 43, his headlights caught something. A figure standing dead center in the road. A woman, pale as moonlight, in a soaked floral dress that clung to her frame. Her hair hung in wet strands over her face, and her arms dangled limp, like a marionette with cut strings. Danny slammed the brakes, tires screeching, the trailer fishtailing before the rig, shuddered to a stop. His heart hammered as he grabbed his flashlight and leaned out the window. "Hey, you okay? You're gonna get killed out here." No answer, just the wind howling through the trees, carrying a faint, sour smell, like damp earth and decay. He climbed down, boots crunching gravel, and aimed the beam at her. She hadn't moved. "Ma'am," he called, stepping closer. The light hit her face, and his stomach lurched. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, pupils dilated to black pits. Her mouth hung slack, lips cracked and bloodless. But it was her stare that froze him, empty yet piercing, like she was looking through him. Then she twitched. Not a step, not a blink, just a jerk, like something yanked her from inside. Danny stumbled back, his breath fogging in the cold. "Jesus, lady, say something." She did. A voice rasped from her throat, low and guttural, not human, more like gravel grinding under tires. "Keep driving." The words slithered into his skull, and before he could react, her head snapped up, neck bending at an impossible angle. A scream tore from her, sharp and jagged, echoing off the trees. Danny bolted for the cab, slamming the door as the scream morphed into laughter. High, unhinged, chasing him as he fumbled the keys. The engine roared to life, and he floored it, the woman shrinking in his rear view until she was just a speck swallowed by the dark. Mile 40. His hand shook on the wheel, sweat beading despite the chill. The CB hissed again, louder, and a voice broke through. Not the dispatcher, not another driver. It was hers. "You didn't stop," it whispered, layered with static. "You should have stopped." Danny yanked the mic cord out, but the voice kept coming, seeping from the speakers, the dashboard, the air itself. "They all see me. They all leave me." He glanced at the mirrors, nothing but empty road. Yet the cab felt crowded, like unseen eyes pressed against his neck. At mile 37, the headlights dimmed, then flared, illuminating the road ahead. There she was again, standing still, same dress, same slack jaw. Only now, she wasn't alone. Shadows flanked her, tall, thin figures with no faces, just smears where features should have been. They didn't move, didn't chase, just watched as he barreled past, swerving to avoid her. The rig jolted, something heavy thudding under the wheels. He didn't look back. Mile 35. The air grew colder, his breath visible now. The dashboard clock froze at 3:13 a.m. His phone was dead, the GPS blank. Then the knocking started, soft at first, tap tap tap, from the trailer. He told himself it was cargo shifting, but it grew louder, rhythmic, insistent. Tap, tap, tap. Like fists on metal. Like something trapped. His mind raced to the load manifest. Frozen beef. Nothing alive. Yet the knocks turned to bangs, shaking the cab, and that voice whispered again, "Let us out." Danny gripped the wheel, muttering prayers he hadn't said since childhood. Mile 30. The road narrowed, trees clawing closer, branches scraping the rig like fingernails. The headlights flickered, and in the strobe, he saw them. Dozens of figures lining the shoulders, motionless, faceless, their heads tilting as he passed. The woman appeared again at mile 28, closer now. Her dress torn, arms outstretched, her mouth stretched wider, a black maw. And the scream came again, shattering the windshield into a spiderweb of cracks. He didn't stop. Couldn't. Mile 25. The banging stopped, replaced by silence so thick it hurt. The CB sparked, and a new voice crackled through. Not hers, but a man's, panicked, familiar. "Danny, it's Roy. Where you at? You're late, man." Roy, his dispatcher. Relief flooded him, but before he could grab the mic, the woman's voice cut in. "He's with us now." The line went dead. Mile 20. The rig sputtered, dashboard lights blinking out. He coaxed it forward, whispering, "Come on, baby. Don't quit on me." Then he saw it. The county line sign, glowing faintly ahead. Salvation. But as he neared, the road stretched, the sign receding like a mirage. The figures were back, closer, the shadows spilling onto the asphalt. The woman stood at the line, smiling now, teeth jagged, eyes gone. "You don't leave hollow," she hissed, and the engine died. Danny's rig was found 2 days later, parked neatly off Route 17. Keys in the ignition, trailer empty. No beef, no blood, just scratches inside the cargo hold. Deep, frantic, human. His logbook lay open on the seat, the last entry scrawled in shaky ink. "She's still here. They all are." Truckers avoid Hollow County now, whispering of a rig that rolls at night. Headlights off. A woman in a floral dress riding shotgun. Some say they hear her on the CB, calling their names. Others swear they've seen Danny, pale and silent, behind the wheel, driving forever down the dead stretch. The night hauler's last run. The clock in Eddie Malone's Freightliner read 3:19 a.m. as he crossed into Black Pine Pass, a desolate stretch of Highway 89, cutting through northern Wyoming. A grizzled trucker with 25 years under his belt, Eddie lived for the hum of the engine and the solitude of the night haul, until tonight. The air was heavy, the kind of stillness that smothers sound, and his CB radio had been silent for hours. Not even a whisper of static. He was hauling a refrigerated load, 50,000 pounds of pork, bound for Boise, 400 miles west. The pass was a shortcut, infamous among drivers for its hairpin turns and spotty cell service. But Eddie trusted his rig and his gut. That trust was about to betray him. At mile marker 112, the headlights caught a glint, something metal, glinting red in the dark. He slowed, squinting. It was a rig, jackknife it off the shoulder, its trailer crumpled like a tin can. No flares, no lights, just a ghost truck abandoned in the pines. Eddie pulled over, his boots crunching frost as he grabbed his mag light. "Anybody out there?" he shouted, voice swallowed by the wind. The cab door hung open, swaying slightly, and inside, the driver's seat was empty, except for a CB mic dangling by its cord, dripping something dark and wet onto the floor. Blood. His stomach twisted, but he'd seen wrecks before. Probably a drunk, he told himself, stumbling off into the woods. Still, he couldn't shake the chill creeping up his spine. Back in his cab, he keyed the mic. "This is Night Hauler, mile 112, Black Pine. Found a wreck, no driver. Anybody copy?" Silence. Then a crackle, a voice, faint, garbled, like it was underwater. "Help me," Eddie froze. "Say again, who's this?" No reply, just a low moan that stretched into a whine, clawing at his ears. He dropped the mic, hands trembling, and gunned the engine. The wreck faded in his mirrors, but the moan lingered, seeping from the speakers even after he yanked the CB's power. Mile 108. The road dipped into a ravine, trees looming like skeletal hands. His headlights flickered, then steadied, revealing a figure trudging along the center line, a man hunched, in a torn flannel shirt and trucker's cap. Eddie slowed, rolling down the window. "Hey, buddy, you from that wreck? Need a lift?" The man stopped, head tilting slowly. When he turned, Eddie's breath caught. His face was wrong, skin gray and sagging, eyes sunk into black hollows, mouth a lipless gash. He didn't speak, just stared, and then his jaw dropped, unleashing a sound like a dying animal, raw and wet. Eddie floored it, the rig lurching as the figure staggered toward him, arms outstretched, fingers clawing the air. Mile 105. Sweat soaked his shirt, his pulse pounding in his skull. The CB sparked back to life, unplugged but alive, spitting static, and that voice again. "Help me." Layered now with others, a chorus of whispers pleading, accusing. "You left us. You drove away." Eddie's eyes darted to the mirrors. The road behind was empty, but the passenger seat wasn't. A shadow sat there, vague, humanoid, its head cocked at an unnatural angle. He didn't turn, didn't breathe, just gripped the wheel and prayed. The shadow shifted, leaning closer, and a cold, damp hand brushed his neck. "Look at me." It rasped, breath rancid with rot. He didn't. Mile 102. The whispers grew louder, overlapping, a cacophony of anguish. The trailer shuddered, something heavy slamming against the walls. Bang, 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 like meat fists pounding to escape. His load was frozen pork, lifeless slabs, but the banging synced with the voices, a rhythm of rage. He glanced at the temp gauge, still 10 below. Nothing alive could move in there. Yet the cab vibrated, the rear view showing the trailer doors buckling outward, metal groaning. "Let us out," the shadow hissed, its voice now inside his head. Mile 99. The headlights died, plunging him into black. He flicked the switch, nothing. Then they flared, blinding, and the road was alive. Figures lined both sides, dozens, maybe hundreds, gray, broken, their clothes shredded, faces mangled. Truckers, he realized, their caps and jackets like his own. Their eyes locked on him. At the center stood the man from before, flannel dripping blood, jaw unhinged, pointing a bony finger. The rig swerved as Eddie yanked the wheel, tires screaming, but the figures didn't flinch. They closed in, hands smearing the windows, leaving wet, red streaks. Mile 96. The engine coughed, RPMs dropping. He coaxed it, begging, "Don't quit, don't quit." The shadow beside him solidified, a man, or what was left of one, flesh peeling, teeth bared in a grin. "You're one of us now," it said, and the trailer doors burst open. The banging stopped, replaced by footsteps, heavy, wet, dragging, approaching the cab. Eddie locked the doors, uselessly, as the windows fogged with breath not his own. Faces pressed against the glass, eyeless, moaning his name. "Eddie, Eddie." Mile 93. The pass exit loomed, a faint glow of dawn beyond the trees. Hope surged, he could make it, but the rig slowed, fighting him, the gauges spinning wild. The shadow laughed, a gurgling cackle, and the figures swarmed, climbing the hood, clawing the roof. The man from the wreck appeared ahead, blocking the road, his chest split open, ribs splayed like wings. "Stay!" he roared, and the rig died, rolling to a stop. Silence fell, thick and final. They found Eddie's truck 3 days later, upright at mile 93, engine cold. The cab was empty, the trailer doors ajar, pork gone, replaced by claw marks gouged into the steel, some still wet with blood. His logbook sat on the dash, last entry smeared in red. They're all here, waiting. Truckers shun Black Pine Pass now, swearing they hear Eddie's voice on the CB some nights, calling for help that never comes. A rig's horn echoing through the ravine, a warning or a lure. The freight of Fallen Ridge. It was 1:13 a.m. when Jake Harrow's Kenworth growled past the rusted Fallen Ridge, 62 miles sign on State Route 44, a lonely artery slicing through Nebraska's Badlands. A 15-year trucking vet, Jake was a man of routine, coffee black, radio low, eyes on the horizon. Tonight's haul was machine parts, 40 tons of steel bound for Omaha by sunrise. The ridge was a shortcut, a winding pass truckers cursed for its blind curves and dead airwaves, but Jake knew it like his own scars. He didn't buy the rumors, drivers vanishing, lights in the cliffs, voices on the wind. Bullshit for bored men. He'd scoff at diner counters. Tonight, though, the sky pressed low, stars snuffed out, and his gut churned like a warning he couldn't name. Mile 58. The CB hissed, a sharp burst of static that made him flinch. He tapped it dead again. Then the headlights dimmed, casting the road in a sickly yellow flicker. Ahead, a shape loomed as semi, flipped on its side. Cab smashed into the rock face. No skid marks, no flares, just silence and the faint drip of diesel. Jake eased his rig to a stop, grabbed his flashlight, and stepped out. The air stung his lungs, bitter with rot. "Hello? You hurt?" he called, beam sweeping the wreck. The driver's door was torn off, the seat empty but soaked, dark, glistening, not fuel. Blood, too much of it. His boots stuck to the asphalt, tacky with the same stain. He climbed back in, hand slick on the wheel, and keyed the mic. "This is Big Jake, mile 58, Fallen Ridge. Wreck here, bad one. Anybody out there?" Static roared, then a voice, thin, trembling, a woman's. "Don't stop," it pleaded, fading to a wet gurgle. Jake's jaw tightened. "Who's this?" "Say again." "Nothing." He tossed the mic, but the gurgle returned, louder, seeping from the speakers, the vents, the glass. His rig jolted, a thud from the trailer, hard enough to rock the cab. He froze. Machine parts don't move. Mile 55. The road twisted upward, cliffs clawing the sky. The thud came again, then another, slow, deliberate beat. Thump, 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 like footsteps pacing the load. His mirrors showed nothing but black, yet the cab felt tight, air thinning. He cracked the window. The rot smell flooded in, thick as a slaughterhouse. Then he saw her, standing on the ridge's edge, a woman in a tattered coat, hair whipping in the wind. She didn't move, just stared, her face a pale blur. Jake blinked, and she was gone. The thumping stopped, replaced by a low moan from the trailer, rising to a scream that clawed his eardrums. Mile 52. The headlights flared, catching her again closer, on the road now, arms limp, head lolling. Her coat flapped open, revealing a chest caved in, ribs jagged through skin. Jake swerved, tires shrieking, but she didn't flinch. As he passed, her head snapped toward him, eyes black voids, mouth stretching into a grin too wide for her face. The scream erupted again, not from her, but the trailer, a chorus of shrieks rattling the steel. He floored it, heart slamming, the woman shrinking in the mirror, until she didn't. She grew, looming, her grin filling the glass. Mile 49. The CB crackled, unpowered but alive. "You saw her." A man's voice rasped, heavy with despair. "She's ours now." Jake yanked the wires, but it kept going. "You can't leave." The trailer shuddered, bangs erupting in waves, dozens, hundreds, fists or claws or worse, splintering the frame. He checked the locks, still secure. The load was steel, dead weight, but it moved, scraping, clawing, a cacophony of rage. The woman appeared again at mile 47, standing still, her coat gone, body a ruin of torn flesh and bone. Shadows flanked her, hulking, misshapen, their limbs too long, heads featureless. They didn't chase, just watched, waiting. Mile 44. The air froze, his breath fogging. The dashboard flickered, needles spinning, clock stuck at 1:13. The woman's voice joined the man's on the CB, overlapping. "Stay with US, Jake. Stay." The shadows multiplied, lining the cliffs, their silhouettes pulsing like living tar. A hand, not his, gripped the wheel, icy, skeletal, steering him toward the edge. He fought it, veins bulging, but the rig veered, gravel spitting as the drop loomed. The trailer doors groaned, then burst, and the screams flooded out. Human, animal, neither, swarming the cab. Mile 41. The headlights died, plunging him into black. He fumbled the switch, nothing. Then they blazed, and the road was a graveyard. Wrecked rigs littered the shoulders, old Macs, new Volvos, cabs crushed, trailers split. Figures crawled from them, broken, dragging themselves toward him. The woman stood ahead, her grin a gaping maw, arms outstretched. "Join us," she howled, and the shadows lunged, slamming the rig, rocking it on its axles. Glass cracked, metal buckled, and the hand on the wheel tightened, nails digging into his flesh. Mile 38. The engine sputtered, choking. Jake begged, "Hold on, girl, hold on." The exit sign glimmered, Fallen Ridge End, 5 miles. Hope flared, but the rig slowed, fighting an unseen weight. The trailer thrashed, doors flapping, empty now. But the shadows were inside, pressing the walls, their moans a deafening roar. The woman appeared one last time, inches from the windshield, her face splitting, tongue lolling, black and endless. "You're home," she screeched, and the rig stopped dead. They found Jake's truck at dawn, mile 38, upright, silent. The cab was empty, the trailer doors wide, machine parts scattered like bones. Gouges marred the interior, handprints, claw marks, some deep enough to pierce steel. His logbook lay open, last words scratched in blood. She took them all. Me too. Truckers bypass Fallen Ridge now, whispering of a rig that rolls at night. Trailer banging, a woman's laugh on the wind. Some hear Jake's voice on the CB, begging, "Don't stop," before the line cuts to screams. The phantom load of Widow's Run. The dashboard clock load 4:02 a.m. as Cal Tucker's Mack truck rolled onto Widow's Run, a 70-mile stretch of Route 66, cutting through Arizona's desert scrub. A wiry trucker with 18 years hauling freight. Cal thrived on the quiet of pre-dawn runs. Tonight, a load of gravel bound for Flagstaff, 200 miles north. The run was a ghost road, flanked by dunes and jagged mesas. Its name tied old tales of widows mourning drivers lost to wrecks or worse. Cal dismissed the yarns, headlights in the sand, cries on the wind, as bunk for men too long in the cab. But tonight, the stars were gone, the sky a void, and a weight settled at his chest he couldn't shake. Mile 65. His CB buzzed, a sharp whine slicing the silence. He adjusted it. Nothing but static. Then a faint sob, soft and broken. "Help," a woman's voice whimpered, trailing into static. Cal frowned, keying the mic. "This is Road Dog, mile 65, Widow's Run. Who's out there?" No answer, just the sob again, looping, growing wetter, more desperate. He switched it off, but the sound lingered, seeping from the dash. Then the trailer jolted, a single, heavy thud, like a boulder shifting. His load was gravel, loose and dead, but the thud came again, deliberate, echoing through the frame. Mile 62. The headlights flickered, casting long shadows across the sand. Ahead, a figure stood, a woman frail, in a white dress stained red at the hem. Her hair hung in clumps, face hidden, arms dangling. Cal slowed, heart thudding. "Lady, you okay?" he yelled, leaning out. She didn't move, didn't speak. He killed the engine, grabbed his flashlight, and stepped down. The air was wrong, hot, thick with a coppery tang. Her head lifted slow, revealing eyes like burned-out coals, skin stretched tight over bone. Her mouth opened, and a sob poured out, not human, but a keening wail that drilled into his skull. He stumbled back, the wail chasing him to the cab as he slammed the door and roared the engine awake. Mile 59. Sweat beaded his brow, hands shaking on the wheel. The CB flared, unpowered, her voice clearer now. "You didn't help," layered with a man's growl. "You left her." The trailer rocked, thuds multiplying, thump, 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 like bodies rolling in the gravel. Cal checked the mirrors, empty road, but the cab felt full, air pressing tight. He glanced right. A shadow sat there, vague, hunched, its head twitching. "Stay," it rasped, voice grinding like stone on steel. He swerved, cursing, and it vanished, only to reappear closer, a cold hand grazing his arm. Mile 56. The headlights dimmed, then surged, illuminating her again, standing still, dress dripping, arms bent backward at impossible angles. She wasn't alone. Shapes flanked her, stooped faceless, their limbs jerking like broken puppets. They didn't move, just stared as he barreled past, the trailer shuddering with each thud. The CB erupted, voices piling over hers. "You drove away. You let us die." A chorus of rage and grief. The shadow beside him grew, its hand clamping his shoulder, nails digging through his jacket. "Look," it hissed, breath sour with decay. Mile 53. The thuds turned to bangs, metal groaning as the trailer walls bowed. Cal's breath fogged, the temp dropping fast, impossible in the desert heat. The woman appeared at mile 51, closer, her face splitting, mouth a black chasm. Her wail hit like a wave, cracking the windshield, glass webbing under the sound. The shadows multiplied, lining the road, their heads tilting in unison. The trailer doors rattled, lock straining, and a new sound joined, scratching, clawing, like nails on stone. "Let us out," the shadow snarled, its grip tightening, pulling him toward the door. Mile 48. The engine coughed, light strobing. He coaxed it, pleading, "Don't give up on me." The woman loomed ahead, her dress shredded, body twisting, bones snapping as she moved. Too fast, too wrong. The shadows swarmed, climbing the rig, hands smearing the windows with dark, wet streaks. The CB screamed, "Cal! Cal!" His name, over and over, from voices he didn't know. The trailer doors buckled, a gap splitting wide, and the scratching stopped. Silence fell, heavy, suffocating. Then footsteps, slow, dragging, crunched the gravel behind the cab. Mile 45. The headlights died, plunging him into black. He fumbled the switch, nothing. They flared back, and the road was a nightmare. Figures staggered from the dunes, men, women, truckers in torn caps and vests, their faces mangled, limbs dangling. The woman stood center, her grin a gaping wound, eyes bleeding black. "Stay," she howled, and the trailer erupted, doors blasting open. The shadows poured out, not gravel, but them crawling, lurching, clawing the cab. Glass shattered. Hands grabbed his arms, his legs, pulling. Mile 42. The exit glowed faintly. Widow's Run in, 10 miles. Hope flickered, but the rig slowed, engine choking under unseen weight. The woman pressed against the windshield, her tongue lolling, coiling like a snake. "You're ours," she screeched, and the shadows flooded in, filling the cab, their moans a deafening tide. The wheel locked, tires skidded, and the rig stopped, lights out, silence absolute. Cal's truck was found at mile 42, upright, abandoned. The cab was empty, the trailer doors wide, gravel gone, replaced by claw marks, blood streaked, some still dripping. His logbook lay on the seat, last entry scrawled, "They're in the load. They want me." Truckers avoid Widow's Run now, swearing they hear a woman sobbing on the CB, a rig's horn wailing through the dunes. Some see Cal, pale and silent, hauling a load that moves, forever trapped on the ghost road.